Welcome back to the Current Events Podcast. I am your host, Hassani Wright, and today we will be focusing in on how gentrification is negatively affecting New York City and its residents, along with the big question, does gentrification do more harm than good? For those of you listening in at home that missed last week's segment, which covered what gentrification was, count yourself lucky because I'll be informing you again today. And be sure to text 1-800-CUR-EVENTS to leave any of your gentrification horror stories for us to read. Again, text 1-800-CUR-EVENTS for an opportunity to have your experience with the gentrification featured on our podcast. That's 1-800-CUREVENTS, 1-800-CUR-EVENTS. So to get started, gentrification is the process in which wealthy upper-class citizens who are usually white move into poor communities that usually inhabit citizens of color. Now, this in and of itself isn't inherently bad. However, there are plenty of negative effects that follow. One of them being an increase in rent. According to the NYU Furman Center, percent change in average rent between 1990 and 2010 to 2014 was 23.5%. Now, I don't know about y'all, but 23.5% is 23.5% more money that I don't have. But now the average rent in Central Harlem has increased 53.2% from 2010 to 2014. Like, wow, that's a lot of money. Now, all of that isn't to say that there aren't some positive aspects that arise from gentrification. Gentrification is a sign of economic growth, and as money flows into these neighborhoods, many things change for the better. Buildings are renovated better, more jobs arrive. As the property rate increases, so does funding for public schools, and statistics have shown that crime rates also decline in gentrified neighborhoods. These are all wins, I agree, but at what cost? Oh, it appears we have got our first gentrification horror story of the day. Before we get to that, let's get to these ads.
Ever wondered what comfortable housing feels like? Well, I'm here to tell you. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Mucci of Mucci Apartment Housing in Central Harlem, built right on the top of where CH Apartments used to stand. What's the difference, you may ask? Well, we have bought out and demolished all small businesses that are placed around what is currently Mucci Apartment Housing in order to maximize spacing and comfortability. With the rent starting at $6,200, we hope to comfortably house an abundant number of people who will enjoy living in one of the most culturally diverse neighborhoods in New York City. Not to mention the amount of stores and corporations nearby meant to amplify that comfortable feeling. Did I even mention the new Starbucks being built on the top of where Ronnie's Bodega used to be? So many opportunities for so little money, with housing once again at $6,200. For more information, text 444 Mucci Housing. Again, 444 Mucci Housing. And remember, we have so much to offer.
Okay, back to the Current Events Podcast. So our gentrification horror story for the day is a submission from a man named Ray Tirado. According to Mr. Tirado, he lived in an apartment complex in East Harlem. He had planned on retiring and living out the rest of his days in this apartment. I mean, it was his childhood home, where his mother grew and raised him. To continue, essentially, his landlord wanted him to move out. They had a whole plan about tearing down the complex and building a new, more expensive one. I mean, I get it, that's more money in their pockets, but at another person's expense, I don't know. Anyways, Ray refused to move out, even though all the other tenants had. He was the last holdout, the last man living there. I mean, this man's apartment was falling apart all around him, and his water didn't even work. But he still wanted to stay. Now, many of you may be thinking, why didn't Ray just move out when he was asked if all these things were occurring? Well, this was his childhood home. He had been promised his home since he was living with his mother in it. And he had paid off everything. He had built an entire life around living in this place. And he had built his entire life off of what was surrounding this building that he could no longer live in. And it was really hard for him. He didn't have the facilities to just move out on such short notice and get another apartment. And although many people might say that it would have just been better for him to find a new home, you have to think, if you were in his position, what would you have done? Would you have fought for your home that you had lived in for over 40 years? Or would you have just let it be taken from you so that a quote-unquote better home could be built on top of it? Apparently, his landlord didn't want to pay for the water to get fixed because she just wanted him out. And I guess this was a way to try to make him do so. I don't know, it seems kind of weird to me. Apparently, the feeling of frustration and marginalization among longtime residents who are displaced by gentrification are magnified as landlords often turn to aggressive and abusive tactics. Ray even tells us he went to court. He even brought this case to court to fight for his home. He ended up losing though. He lost the court battle and his home all in the same day for less money than he had put into it. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. But can you all see now how gentrification negatively affects people? This proves that gentrification does more harm than good. I mean, yeah, sure, more money is made from a larger, more expensive apartment being built on an old one, but whose pockets does it go back into? Oh yeah, the rich and the white. I mean, it leaves people of color homeless and without the comfortability of the neighborhood they've made an entire life around. And that's it for the show today, guys. Be sure to tune in next week where we'll be cooking with Gordon Ramsay. Until then, be sure to keep up with your current events.